Welcome back to the Constantine reviews with episode 2, The Darkness Beneath. Episode 1 gave us all the goals and general world building, so episode 2 should be developing on that, and dunking us headfirst into the series proper. So let's get started and take a look. The episode begins in Pennsylvania in a town called Hedditch, a Welsh mining town, so I can bust out my terrible, stereotypical Welsh accent for you. Yeah, I won't be doing that again, I promise. One of the workers comes home after work, immediately hitting the bottle hard, telling his wife that he's had more men threatening to quit. His wife asks if they're still hearing the sounds, with him telling her to not even mention it, so we can assume there's something supernatural going on in the mines. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for a Balrog. You can't get more badass awesome than that. The guy wants his dinner, acting quite hostile to his wife, with her looking pretty scared of him, so it's pretty obvious it's not a happy marriage. The guy goes to take a shower, but something ominous appears behind him, and while in the shower head starts leaking oil onto the guy, and when it stops, a big ball of fire engulfs the guy, killing him, as we see an ominous coal handprint on the wall. For an opening teaser, it was quite good. It gave us all the information we needed to set up the episode. However, it does quite strongly indicate that this will be a Monster of the Week episode. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. We also see the new badass opening credits. I don't have much to say on them, except I think they're pretty awesome, and really sets the tone for the episode. We then move to the Constantine cave, who's practicing a few magic tricks, when Chaz comes in to give him his winnings, as he's placed bets using capnomancy, the method of telling the future through smoke, which Chaz appropriately says he should be an expert on. Constantine tells Chaz that they're going to Hedditch, but Chaz won't be tagging along due to a previous problem they had there.
Pennsylvania, the succubus on a freight train.
That warrant still stands.
Funny what a long memory the law has when it comes to train derailments.
So Constantine goes alone as he walks the streets of Hedditch, while elsewhere a woman is drawing the exact scene happening right then, not knowing herself why she keeps drawing him. And it's a really great touch that some of her paintings are actually the covers of the Hellblazer comics. That's a really nice attention to detail, plus it shows just how much Matt Ryan looks like Constantine. While Constantine watches the funeral procession of the miner, he bumps into the drawing woman, surprising her that he's actually real. And Constantine, knowing a con when he sees one, at least he thinks so, blows the woman off saying it's a con. She insists on getting answers, so he shows her the picture in sunlight, which he just uses to slip away quietly. But he won't get rid of her that easily, as she's nicked his wallet and knows who he is now from his driver's license. John goes to a bar to start asking questions, talking about the town's flag, the Welsh dragon, and the irony of a guy being burned alive, with another barfly who's surprised he knows about mining.
Grew up in Liverpool, mate. Breathed in more coal dust than fresh air as a lad.
Yes, grew up in Liverpool. The Cardiff town of Liverpool, it seems. I know I said I wouldn't criticise his accent, but if you're Welsh with the accent, the word mate is a dead giveaway. Constantine says that the guy must have been a good bloke, but the guy says he was actually a bastard. So much for not speaking ill of the dead. And one of John's wilder theories is that maybe a dragon killed the guy. But as another guy enters the conversation, he says that other people have been killed as well, 9 so far, but they all died in mining accidents.
Some of the boys are saying we dug a little too deep. We knocked on the door of hell, and now hell's knocking back.
Oh, see? Digging too deep. I knew it was a Balrog. I'm a genius. Constantine focuses on one aspect of the guy's story, that people heard knocking in the mine, as he goes to investigate himself. Constantine starts searching the mine as something from underground starts following him. He gets to a particularly hard bit of rock, putting his ear to it to hear knocking as he hits it with a pickaxe. But listening carefully wasn't necessary, as the knocking is loud and booming as the place starts shaking itself apart around him. And then after the commercial break, John is sneaking into a wake. That was a bizarre cut. They could have showed us he got out of the mine unscathed, instead of us just assuming it. Before the break, he looked in quite a bit of trouble, but I guess it was just the falsest of false tension with no payoff. But anyway, in the house, John gets a chance to snoop around a bit as he slips into the marked off area, getting into the bathroom where the guy died, immediately noticing the handprint that's still there. Odd it hasn't been cleaned up yet. And John gets to the shower head, pouring the black residue into a bottle, and while he does, the guy's wife appears, so John tells her he's a reporter. Not sure how that makes his intrusion any better, like. But John uses the cover, noticing the woman has coal on her arm, which seems normal for a coal mining town. John asks her what she thinks happened to her husband, saying he can write a story celebrating her husband's life. But she gives him a different story to write.
It's about a Romany girl. She got letters from a man, a rich man, who wanted to marry her. Said he was the captain of industry. Failed to mention it was coal. Now, will that story sell papers?
Obviously, the story gives us information that it was a terrible marriage, and then the woman makes a pass at Constantine, which he rebukes, so she's nasty, shouting for him to get out. And on the way out, the boss of the mining firm wants to know why Constantine is there. He gets some cronies to check him for ID, but John just beats them up, stopping when the boss punches him in the face. He then comes clean, saying he knows what's wrong with the mine, but the boss orders him to leave, and John knows that he's heard the knocking as well, and isn't doing anything about it. I must admit the mystery is interesting and really well told, at least for the most part. You know, you got the disgruntled boss who wants people to work, you got the abused wife, and you got all this supernatural stuff, creating many different story threads. It's a good combination. Although, come to think of it, it is disturbingly close to a Scooby-Doo plot. Constantine gets back to his hotel room and the woman from earlier is there waiting for him. He's still suspicious she's a con woman, but she returns his wallet, minus the money of course, telling him she knows who he is, and he says he knows who she is. Her name is Zed. She tries to convince him she's genuine, telling him that she has visions she can't control. But when Zed grabs John's arm, she sees into his character and pain, which actually finally convinces him, so he decides to give her a test. He tells her to start thinking of a blank image, which puts her into a trance, and as she does, he places a drop of the oil from the shower in her hand, which causes her to go back to when the miner was killed with the fire hitting her, which then changes to a cross, and Zed's on the ground with a burning hole in her hand, as she screams in pain, with Constantine quickly bringing her out of it. And Zed tells Constantine that she saw a cross, so he knows where exactly to go, just before quickly changing. But instead, he slips out of the window, leaving Zed, which is kind of a dick move after the pain he just put her through. Having got a closer introduction to Zed, my initial impressions are that she's basically Liv's replacement, and if Liv had been a permanent character, she would be doing what Zed's doing. Zed does have a more dangerous backstory though, so maybe that's what the series needed. But I'm sure Liv will be back eventually. Constantine gets to a disused church and he suspects something supernatural is in the building, but actually it's a couple having sex. Yeah, in a church. That's pretty tacky. Constantine's eye is drawn to the demon painting on the wall, asking the guy about it. He's told about a story of a tall man who looks in your windows. So once they leave, Constantine starts a spell, which consists of a thermos full of water with the added drop of blood. And after some incantation, he starts pouring it over himself, and through the water he can see the spirit or demon as it rushes towards him, forcing him to stop the spell. Which again, I really like the way spells are shown and how they work in the show. It's the fact that they're not just CGI light shows. They look more subtle and genuine, as in they look like they'd work in the real world. Zed goes to the bar looking for Constantine, finding the barfly from before still there.
Have you seen an Englishman? He wears a trench coat?
Yeah, I think he disappeared in a blue box outside. It was really weird. The barfly tells Zed not to waste her time on him, thinking she's pining for a lost love. He also reveals that his son died, and he used to be the town's preacher before his death, but not anymore, hence the disused church. Zed goes home, finding Constantine sleeping there, pissed off with him, telling him to get out. But Constantine tells her he's there to help now, telling her what he does.
An exorcist, demonologist, and occasional dabbler in the dark arts.
Ha! Again, nice callback there. And Constantine starts interrogating Zed, asking why she's in a little mining town, assuming correctly that she's on the run. He warns her if she joins him she'll have everything, including the denizens of hell, after her. But despite that, she wants to understand her ability, so she's staying, and it's decided. But their talk is cut short as the mine alarm sounds, signalling another mine collapse as they rush there to try and help. John talks with one of the miners who confirms that they heard knocking before the collapse, and he goes to speak with one of the bosses, getting in his car. He tells Constantine that they renewed the mine and made it profitable again, but Constantine knows that they dug too deep where they weren't supposed to. Again, Balrog. But then the car doors lock suddenly and it starts filling up with black liquid. And to increase the peril, a demonic hand appears from the water, pulling the guy and Constantine under, as Zed appears trying to pry open the door. Fortunately, she manages to get the door open, releasing Constantine, but the other guy is unfortunately dead. Getting away from the crime scene to avoid questions, Constantine and Zed talk about what's causing the problem. He says that it's spirits known as Coblin-Eye, spirits of dead miners that warn the living when a mine is unstable. But that doesn't explain why they're coming to the surface and killing, because they don't do that. So John suspects someone is summoning the Coblin-Eye for their own purposes. The Coblin-Eye spirits are more than likely based on the Welsh spirits myth of Bucha, or Tommyknockers as they're sometimes known. And yeah, they're spirits that knock on the walls of mines when a cave-in is about to happen. I do like that they're not just making things up and they're actually using folklore. It's always better that way. It adds to the immersion. They go to the bar where the miners are having an emergency meeting, which is where Zed tells Constantine of the priest who would have reason to cause chaos after his son died in the mine, so they need to find him. And Constantine gets Zed to sit in the priest's seat and use her ability again. She gets a vision of sitting in a river by a waterfall, seeing the priest's camp, and the barman gives them the directions to the place. At the river, Constantine gets Zed to set up a ward as he's going to try using magic on the priest. However, when he starts doing some incantation, the guy joins in, as he knows the prayer. Constantine tells him he knows he's raising evil, but the guy says you need faith to raise evil, and he hasn't got any left. But he does give John some information on the situation, that it's not the miners dying, it's the bosses in charge, and someone is making them pay. Which it just so happens that the boss and his son are going into the mine to investigate, so they need to get there quick. In the mine, things start happening and moving around until a Coblin Eye appears, tossing the son and then grabbing the boss round the neck, just as Zed and Constantine show up. He has Zed paint a triangle on the wall, the alchemical symbol for Earth, and after Constantine talks to the spirit, it leaves having been reminded that it's a protector, not a killer. They find the boss dead, but the son's alive, and John decides the mine needs to be closed for good, setting up explosives. And outside, the priest has shown up to see the mine destroyed as John gives him the detonator to finally have closure for his son. The mine's gone, but it's not over, as he knows who's summoning the Coblin Eye. Which leads him all the way back to the beginning of this story, to the wife, as he remembers the handprint on the wall and the coal mark on her arm, meaning she's been in contact with the Coblin Eye. I do like the mystery thriller aspect of this episode. It shows that Hellblazer, or in this case Constantine, can span many genres, with this episode being a murder mystery with the added supernatural twist. It just gives us an idea of what kind of stories we might expect. However, in this murder mystery, there won't be that scene where the killer is arrested. John confronts the wife and she summons some Coblin Eye to kill him. However, John will spare her if she sends them away, as the spreading darkness is what gives her power to summon the Coblin Eye, infecting her. But she's very confident in her own abilities. But to raise the dark tone a bit, she forgets that she's summoning the spirits of dead miners, which include her husband, as his spirit bursts through the floor and drags her away to who knows where. I'm not sure how I feel about that, honestly. Because on one hand, yes, she was a homicidal spirit-raising psychopath. But on the other, it just feels wrong that it's her abusive husband that gets revenge on her. That just makes me feel uncomfortable. But come to think of it, that's the way a lot of Hellblazer stories made me feel, so I can't knock the show, really. Constantine goes back to his hotel, finding Zed there, and she still wants to join him, with John telling her that everyone who trusts him dies. But whatever the peril, she needs his help with her abilities, so she's sticking with him from now on, which Constantine finally relents, going to sleep. And the episode ends with the priest reopening the church and Zed watching over Constantine as he sleeps. So that was episode 2 of Constantine, and it's a marked improvement on the first episode, with few problems. The mystery was indeed very compelling, and the supernatural stuff really interesting, especially because of the overall Welsh theme, which I admit I did enjoy. Like I said at the start, this episode is mostly a Monster of the Week episode, but it's a good one, showing off how Constantine works when he's investigating an event and how he deals with it. This episode also introduces Zed to the show as a permanent character, who, like I said, is a Liv replacement at the moment, but her backstory will add to the show, I'm sure. Episode 2 also does some solid world building, giving us little tidbits on Constantine and what he does during daily life, like using magic to win bets, so this is a pretty solid episode in my opinion. So join me next time when we take a look at episode 3, The Devil's Vinyl, and we get introduced to another recurring character? Not really a villain, not really an ally. You know what, it's complicated. More on that next episode. See you next time.